It was the biggest gift he could have ever gave me, letting me know that I was worthy of telling my stories, and my stories touched other people. But it was my job to tell the story. And once I understood that, then my world started rolling forward.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand.
If you're accomplished at what you do, but you feel like you're coming up short in your goals, stop what you're doing and listen to this episode. Today, we're speaking with our client and I'm proud to say very close friend, A.K. Moss. As you'll hear, Kathy is extremely accomplished as a poet and storyteller. So wait no further. Let's just defer to her for her story.
Well, hello.
Hey, A.K. Moss. Thank you for joining us on Be Bold Branding.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here, and all that you guys have done for me, I can't even tell you how much it's an honor to talk with you guys today.
Well, it's an honor for us, and it's been an honor working with you from day one. So I want to sort of set the stage for the listeners, if I could, okay? Everybody listening right now, I want y'all to know that A.K. Moss has been awarded just some of the things that she's been awarded, okay? IWMA Female Poet of the Year, IWMA Poetry Album of the Year, Keeper of the West People's Choice Award, Columbia Poetry Gatherings People's Choice Award, just to name a few, right? She's also authored a book trilogy. Congratulations, obviously, for all of that. And now that everybody sort of knows who they're talking to, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story and like what led you to write about the West and drive your passion for poetry?
Absolutely. There's so much I could tell you, Michael, and I'll try to keep it fairly short. The struggles that I had as a child really impacted us, from living underneath a 2-ton truck to moving into an old homestead where we had to replace windows in it. One thing that my mom never let us do is ever let us know that we were poor. And we would always sit around the fire at nighttime and we would tell stories. And stories, it didn't matter if it was Bible stories, made up stories, whatever it was, that's where it was at. And when we moved into Oregon, I had a problem, an issue with reading. So I was dyslexic, and come to find out, I struggle with ADHD. Here we are. So, which is actually my superpower now that I understand it. But in growing up, all the struggles that I went through from writing and spelling and punctuation, none of that made any sense. So when we met with my second father, who raised us as a family and began our adventure, he had gotten sick, and I was afraid I was going to lose his stories because he was also a storyteller. So I started trying to write them down, and I wanted to write a story, but it ended up being poetry. And so here pretty quick, I had one poem, and then I had a second poem, and pretty quick, I had a third poem, and Mom's like, "These are really cute, Kath." And I thought, well, maybe I'm good at that. So anyways, and from that in 1988 was the changing point in my presenting of poetry through meeting Baxter Black.
Okay, now Baxter Black is a very famous cowboy poet. The moment you mentioned his name and said that you knew him and that you had an interaction with him that changed the course of your journey as a poet, I was very intrigued by that. Please, please, please tell that story.
Sure. So what had happened was I had created a little poetry book called Cowboy in the Making. And I had a good friend of mine who was an artist draw the pictures. And we stapled it together and we put it in a book form. And she says, "You have to go to this show with me. It's a poetry show." And I thought, a poetry show? What the heck? And so we had our little booth sitting there, and we were talking to people, and I had printed 100 copies. My anticipation was to give them to friends and family who had known our stories. And in that, pretty quick, Baxter Black walked up and he said, "I hear you do cowboy poetry. Tell me a poem." Okay. And I had no idea. It's like, sure. So I recited a poem I called Rodeo Ride, which is a kid coming out of the bucking chute for the very first time. And when I finished, he said, "Why are you not on stage?" And at that point, it had never really dawned on me that anything I had to say would be of value to somebody else. And I said, "There ain't no way." And he looked at me shocked, actually, and he said, "Too bad." And he turned around and walked off. And I watched him walk away, and I thought, what the heck just happened? Anyways, and I really got to thinking about our stories and the stories that we have. And a year later, I got a phone call and I was requested to open for Baxter. And at that point, I had honed in on what Baxter actually told me. It was the biggest gift he could have ever gave me, letting me know that I was worthy of telling my stories. And my stories touched other people. But it was my job to tell the story. And once I understood that, then my world started rolling forward. And I was able to go from Canada to Arizona to New Mexico, telling my poetry, my stories, and just being who I am today.
I love that story. I love that story. I just think that he couldn't have said it any better.
No.
And hit where you needed to hear it.
Too bad.
Too bad.
I know. It should be my slogan, right? Or a t-shirt. Too bad.
So poignant. So poignant. So spot on.
It was a great turning point for sure. Just take us to, pretty much present day of how life has been for you as a cowboy poet and storyteller up until present day, until we meet, and then we'll kind of pick it up from there.
Absolutely. Back in 98 is when I actually opened for Baxter. And I called him before the show, about a week and a half before the show. And I said, Baxter, I'm going to be opening for you. Is there anything that I need to do? And he said, and if you know his personality, he says, you got a tight 25 minutes. It's like, done. So I got her down to 23 and a half minutes. I was like, got on. But anyways, what that did is it gave me a goal, because had he not given me that, obviously I could babble on forever. Just saying. Anyway, so when I finished that set and he got up, and I don't know if you've ever seen Baxter perform, but that man is so theatrical. And I knew I could not put my fingers up my nose and fall around on the stage and roll around and do all that he did to create his poetry. But anyways, when I walked off stage, I'm more of a subtle person. I got up and I sat next to my late husband, and he got on stage and he started doing his first poem, which was really drawing the people in and, just really involving his theatrics. And he stopped. He stood up and he looked at me and he said, "You choked me up." How he saw me I have no idea. But from that point on, I knew this is what I'm called to do. I'm just a storyteller. So from that point, I really worked hard on putting my name out there and doing all these things to be involved with the cowboy poetry world, the singers and songwriters, because I've always loved my second dad, Roy Saul, was a horse trader. And so we had hundreds and hundreds of horses through growing up. We buckarooed, we day rode, we, all of this stuff. And so I fit well in that area, but I did not know how to promote myself. One of the hardest things to do is to talk about, look at me. Everything that I write about other people, because it's not about me. It's about the stories that are out there that need to be told that will never be told if I'm not there to say it. So with that, I found the last 20 years that I was talking within a box, if you will. I was talking to the same people, saying the same things and getting the same feedback. And I really wanted to reach outside the cowboy area, because every time I would get off stage or we would have a great show, people would like, man, this is the first time I ever heard cowboy poetry, or gosh, I never had any idea. You remind me so much of. And I wanted to reach outside that box, because the whole genre of cowboy poetry and storytelling is about tradition. It's about history. It's about strength. It's about inner strength and depth, and, on and on it goes. And I wasn't getting there. And hence, I was listening to Peter George, who does public speaking podcast. I love that man.
Oh, we do too.
I listened to him probably about 2 weeks, and then you guys came on, and I heard you guys speaking, and I thought, I don't know what a brand is. A brand to me is on the hide, on a calf, out there in the pasture. I had no idea what a brand was as far as the modern society or, today's society. So anyways, with that said, although I had traveled, once again, from Canada to Arizona, I wasn't communicating what I needed to communicate to tell people what I offered to do, if that makes sense.
It does. And I know based on that interview, can't say thank you enough for reaching out to us to have a conversation about, okay, who are these people? How can they help me? Because obviously something you heard in that interview made your eyes pop open or your ears open up and, hey, maybe they could help. What struggle were you having, honestly, Kathy, that caused you to like pick up the phone that day?
The struggle I was having was not knowing what to say to the people that were looking for me. I think the best way is when you ask me, what do you want your people to take away? What do you want your audience to take away when you walk off stage? I had no idea. None. It was like, I do poetry. You know, what are you supposed to take away when you're doing poetry? But it really taken the 12-week masterclass that you guys offered took me a lot of internal. I was all about external saying, you know, this is Kathy, this is Kathy, this is what I did, and this is what I did. But I had not looked at all, what am I actually offering the people? I wasn't looking at the people, although that is where I addressed, but I was telling everybody about me, thinking they needed to know about me, but not what I have to offer as a storyteller, as a communicator, as a coach, as a mentor to students. I wasn't talking about that. I was just saying, hey, you know, we rode horses, or hey, we worked cows, or hey, isn't this a beautiful sunset? As far as social media went. As far as marketing, it's like, hey, you know, I'm here, if I'm available.
Right. You were focused more on what you do versus who you are and how you can
Yeah.
help somebody else.
Like the
And
only,
it's common.
only thing that A.K. Moss poetry was missing was A.K. Moss.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And yeah, what I had to offer. When you'd asked me that, I got to looking back on some of the reviews of some of the most amazing people, and they would say, you know, great things. And I think this happens to a lot of us as performers. They say a lot of great things, but we roll it off of our back because we're not in it for the praise. We're in it because we're passionate about it.
Right.
And the stories that we have to tell, you know, we're just passionate about it. So it was really cool to see how you guys were able to bring a little bit more of me alive and be part of the bigger picture, because there's a lot of stories to tell out there.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah, no doubt. And we enjoyed working with you and have enjoyed just immensely getting to know you because you're a spectacular person. And your passion for what you're doing is so good. And clearly from your accolades, you're very good at it. And how do you think that going through the BrandFace program has helped you now to expand that audience and thereby also growing people's interest in cowboy poetry?
Absolutely. Because now I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. Before it was I was doing it because I was passionate. But now I know that when I have somebody come in and say, you've touched me, you brought back my dad, you know, or something in a poem that I had said, it warms my heart that when they walk away, now they walk away with a feeling of family, of history. And before I had done that, like in my website and on my social media, I was not clear in that. I wasn't communicating that that's where my powerhouse is so that people can come in. I can invite them in more, I think is how I want to say that. My words invite them in to read a little bit more about what I'm doing, because I think there's a lot that I have to say in a lot of different ways and do it in a Western atmosphere. But we're all kindred spirits in so many ways, you know.
Absolutely. And just to bring the audience, you know, full circle on exactly what we're talking about, Kathy went through our 12-week mastermind program to actually build her personal brand pretty much from the ground up. And when I say from the ground up, yes, everybody comes into it with their own story already. We just help you figure out how to best showcase and present that story to achieve the business goals and personal goals too that you want to accomplish. And so throughout that 12-week time period, we took her through our 3-phase personal branding formula: the define, the develop, and the display. And just to kind of give everybody a foundation there for what you actually went through, what was the most eye-opening thing about your personal branding journey, Kathy?
Was communication, I think, is the biggest part. When I went back through and read my bio after going through your program, I can't imagine any one person understanding anything that was in that bio on what I actually offer.
The previous bio. Oh, yeah.
The previous bio.
Yeah. I think a lot of people feel that way, right?
It's like, you know, I had so much stuff in that, trying to compact it all together. And when you were able to share the techniques that you did and to take out specific parts, the most powerful parts of the communication on what people are looking for. It just opened up the whole world for me. And when you read my bio now, it's simple, it's straightforward, it's a storyline, and people know what they're going to get. And I don't have to try to redevelop that when they call and say, hey, it says that you did. And then I have to go into story and say, oh, yeah, that's because, and, you were more definite, more critique, more, spot on. And it just made a world of difference to not try to capture a whole picture, but capture what is Kathy and who does she represent. When Michael says, you have to wear the suit, it's like I wear the suit every day. I just didn't know Mike Asherbrenner when he was talking. He says, you don't see the forest through the trees because I was stuck in the trees, and you guys were able to take me out of those trees and let me see a much broader horizon on where I can go with my poetry and my stories and the people I connect with.
Yeah.
That just warms our heart. Like
It
we
does.
love that more than you know. We say, and Tanya taught it to me, it's hard to read the label when you're inside the jar. And whatever our specific craft is, that's our craft. And our craft, originally hers, and I think she brought me into it, is helping people unveil that inner star that's already there. People like you're a writer, you're a gifted writer, and a gifted storyteller, and you just needed somebody on the outside looking in to say, okay, illuminate this, illuminate that, illuminate that. You had all the good. You just had to put it together right.
Absolutely.
And it tickles us that the relationship is what we love the most out of it, and getting to know you the way we have. But to also know that you're happy with it and it's working is everything to us.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And, if you don't mind me expanding on that just a little bit, when I wrote the trilogy, I had written the first novel called Unspoken. I long-handed it. And the reason why I'm telling this is because if there's somebody out there that's struggling or thinking that they can't do this, I wrote Unspoken longhand because I didn't know how to type because my brain didn't connect with the fingers. And when I got that finished, it sat on the shelf and it didn't go anywhere. And I had a man that I had met for probably about 45 minutes at a Christmas party about 4 years prior. He came up to the meat shop that Tracy and I had owned, and he says, I have something for you. And he says, you inspired me to do this. And he handed me his first novel. And he said, when you're ready to print, let me know. And he says, and I'll help you step through that door. From that came the 3 novels. I was so scared about the first novel, accepting it as me becoming an author. And I thought, if there was one person, the only way I could print this book was if there was one person that I might affect that might help handle with horses or overcome inner strength or overcome poverty, which is what Unspoken begins with, then I have done my job. When I had released the book a year and a half later after that, I had always put a business card inside the cover of the book. And I had gotten a phone call and I was sitting down at the meat shop when my cell phone rang and this young lady got on there. She says, are you A.K. Moss? And I said, I am. And she says, I just got done finishing Unspoken. And I said, well, that is awesome. I said, did you enjoy it? She says, it changed my life. And I thought, I'm so happy to hear that. She says, I don't think you understand. And I said, tell me your story. And she said, last night I was going to commit suicide.
Wow.
And she said, my mom had bought this book and she laid it on my counter. And she said, I had the pills in my hand. And I saw that book and I thought, you know what? My last gift to my mom is I'll read the dang book. But anyways, and she said, I just finished it and I had to call you. So with that, I don't know her name. I don't know what she took out of the book. All I know is that stories matter. And all I know is that even through the struggles of me becoming whoever I am today, whether it be a poet, a storyteller, a writer, an author, or just a gal on a small farm in Oregon, the idea that being able to be a storyteller, overcoming these obstacles, if one person can look and hear that story and think, you know what, I can give that a shot too. I've done my job and I'm good with that. So I just thought I'd share that. But with the help of you guys, I'm able to share that far greater than what I had 6 months ago when we first started this whole crazy adventure of meeting Tanya and Michael.
Well, Kathy, that story just blew me away. And what a beautiful testament. We all go through this life seeking our purpose, right? that's only one small part of your purpose, that young lady's life, right? And imagine how many other lives have and will continue to be affected by just the stories you tell.
Yeah.
It's an incredible blessing that you have been given this talent and the life, even though when you were living the life as a youngster, it didn't feel quite so glamorous or quite such a blessing, but turns out that it would be one of the greatest blessings of all.
Yeah.
So we're just so proud to know you. Okay, I'm going to do a 180 here and go in a totally different direction, because I know the one thing that a lot of people want to know, it's like, okay, this is a fantastic story. This is heartwarming. This is blowing me away. But okay, what does it mean in terms of business? So let's turn businessy for a moment. Okay. We were only about maybe 2.5, 3 weeks into the 12-week process. And you reached out to me and you said, hey, I know we're not finished with the brand yet. I know we've only begun, but can you help me with something? Like, somebody's reached out to me. I don't know how to price my services or present myself in the best way to make as much money as possible with my craft. Pick up from there and tell me a little bit about what happened.
One of the things I believe when you're in humble beginnings, you don't have a value. And this is one of the biggest challenges that I personally have, is a value on what is a story worth or whatever. And when I called, I had an opportunity to work for the Travel Oregon, if you will. They were having a conference and they wanted a cowboy poet or a storyteller. They wanted to know what I would charge. And for the last 20 years, I worked for nickels and dimes. I was so passionate about what I did not have a value to put on it. I would travel, 13 hours to do a 30-minute program, and then come home, and I would have spent $600 in travel fees and brought home, well, I'll say brought home, but spent the $200 that I earned, if you will. So anyways, but it was the passion that I was worried about, or what I was working with. With that said, I knew after I lost my husband, I knew I needed to make this more a business instead of a hobby. And that was a huge challenge for me, because now all of a sudden I have to have this worth and not knowing how to do it. And that was one of the reasons why I signed up for your class. But with that, when I finally had enough guts to ask you, how do I do this? And you were able to show me the value within what I offer instead of the value, what it is in my heart. When people walk away with a value and they say, holy cats, or that was so heartwarming, whatever it is, that value goes to me. But what that does for me, when I receive that finances, then I can help the people around me I can hire somebody to help me with marketing, or I can help another poet come up. If not, I would starve to death. And then I would just be penniless, sitting here wishing I would have done something different. Not being afraid of money is a challenge. Doing it for a living and a business as a profit so that I can give further beyond is what I have taken away from the personal branding that you guys have given me. Is when I called you guys and it's like, help. And you're like, okay, this and this and this and this. And by the way, and I'm thinking, can I do that? The support you gave me during, before, and after the hours that you put into creating so that I could see the full picture before I offered. So when I presented him the balance that was due, I was confident in what I was giving him because it was the experience. It wasn't necessarily just the story. It was the experience that I have to offer. So in a roundabout way, it changed my life. It changed who I am. I can stand up a little bit further and say, I am a cowboy poet. And I do have a story. And boy, if you want to hear it, I think other folks would like to hear it too. So.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's about changing how you're seen so you can charge what you're worth.
Amen, sir.
And you're on that track now, and you'll never have to look back. And those dollars and commas and zeros will continue to grow because you're worth that all day long. I love your poetry, and it's absolutely gifted. And now you're on that trajectory that you can hold on to forever. And like you said, it helps illuminate the craft, the genre, other poets coming up. You can be a Baxter Black to somebody else. No doubt have been. Now it's amazing. And for me, I got to say, like, even the way you came into our life, is amazing because, I just love in this business, the connections and where they come from and how they come about. And I don't think any of it's happenstance. And it just excites me every time. And I put you at the top of that.
Well, thanks. And you know what? I firmly believe that also. I knew I was on a journey, and out of all of the opportunities on the internet, out of all of the branding things and the marketing tools and on, a person can go through thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars and only get a piece of what you guys have given me. And I am so thankful that the good Lord sent me on that cruise, and talking to Tanya and having somebody, because I had called, if you don't mind, I had called 3 other businesses before you guys looking for that connection. And every one of them, as soon as I said what I said, a story or my struggles, every one of them are like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And Tanya was the only one out of all of them that said, oh my gosh, that speaks to my heart. And I knew I had a connection. And then we sat there and, I don't know, BS for 15, 20 minutes. I was like, oh yeah. And by the way, and did you know? And yes.
It was a connection from the very beginning. There's no question about it. And Kathy, you know, just the journey of going through this with you, I think that even the other people in the mastermind with you were so enthralled by you and loved and supported you throughout your journey at the same time, that it was like a love fest. You know, that group of people was just absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
When I got into that group, I was so awestruck, because you're talking with, there was not one cowboy in that whole setting. I'm just going to say that out loud.
Right.
Might have been a few rednecks, but you know.
Yeah. And the hillbilly.
Including our girl.
And a hillbilly. Every day's a Saturday. But I was so intimidated, and there were so many times where I struggled because I didn't think that I belonged. And what that class did, about the 3rd class in, I fell into where I needed to be. It wasn't about the other people, but the other people's stories are what helped build me. The other people's curiosity are what helped build me. The other people's answers to the questions that I had helped create me. So the master class in itself, when you offer them, when you said, you know, I think you would be great in the master class, I don't do well in a class setting. And I was like, okay. And I got in there, and, you know, you have $1 million guy here, you know, and web designer and, you know, whatever else that's in the class. You're like, holy cats, what can I give to the table? And every one of them fed me. And then they walked away with whatever I had to offer. They were so thankful for whatever it was that they took away from my stories. So between it all, it created a friendship beyond, because I'm still in contact with half of the people from that class, still building and still growing from that. So it's awesome.
Oh, so happy to hear that, Kathy. So what advice would you give somebody about becoming a brand face?
I would say it's life-changing. There is no doubt. In the 20 years that I was in business, not only as a cowboy poet, a storyteller, but also we owned a meat shop. So we made our own bacons and hams and all that stuff. So I had been advertising and marketing for over 25 years. When you find somebody such as BrandFace that takes all of what branding is and brings that knowledge into somebody's space to where they can digest it. And it's not that you shove it down their throat. It's that you repeat and you socialize and you visit and you help us build it into our psyche. So it's not just, there's your information, take it and go. You're like, you know what? Does that make sense to you? How about, and what if? And you were so open to all of that. There is nobody on this earth I would rather have as a coach than you two, because from what I have seen and how I've experienced this whole experience, you guys are at top notch.
Oh, thank you.
You're going to make Michael Carr cry.
I haven't fighted back the whole time.
I know, me too. I was going to blame it on Michael.
The camera won't show good enough. You know what I mean? I've neglected to reach up and just been blinking a lot, you know.
Well, it's heartfelt. You know, I feel, you know, but I feel it. It's heartfelt. Knowing what I have been through. It's so heartfelt. And yeah, I just can't say enough about you guys. So,
well, back at you.
Absolutely.
Really. To let us off the hook a little here, I want to ask you a whimsical question. Well, I mean, it could be seen that way, but it's definitely a turn. If our listeners had the freedom to visit anywhere on earth, anywhere in the world, which place would you recommend them to visit and why?
I would say the desert. I'm talking high desert, where you can see horizon to horizon. No trees, no difference in the scenery, but the humbleness of finding yourself within the space is what I firmly believe helps me find peace and quiet and solitude. But yeah, you can see the storms coming from miles and you can watch them pass by. And it's kind of like the philosophy of life in my world. You can see them pass by, the sun's going to shine afterwards, and you can see it all happen in one sky. You don't have to wait to top the mountain to find it.
A beautifully poetic answer
That's
from
a
a
great answer.
world-class poet.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Wow. So, Kathy, let's end this. Sad to say, but we can do this again many more times because we're friends now. In fact, you're going to wake up one day and you're going to hear people talking out on your front porch, and it's going to be me and Michael with coffee in our hand, waiting on you to wake up.
We're going to have to get up early.
We're pretty early, but I don't know if we're that early.
That would beat her up.
That's true. That's true. We'll camp out overnight. What's the best way for people to learn about you or contact you if they want a world-class performer for their audience to really help them connect with the heart of Western heritage?
My website is it has all my blogs on it. I'm working on podcasts on it, and my books are there. So I would say just go to akmossbooks.com, see what's going on. Everything's there. So it's pretty easy to find, and you can find out more about me. You can email me. I believe you can even call me if you want to. But I'd love to hear from you and see where the world takes us.
Kathy, thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Mm-hmm.
What a connection we've made, and what an honor it is to know you as not only a client, but most importantly, a friend.
Thank you, guys. You guys have changed my life, and so look forward to that relationship we'll have in the future.
Brought to you by BrandFace, the only comprehensive personal brand building system across the globe.